Hey everyone, it's Elliott, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about using your Fractal FM3 for live and loud scenarios, as well as for home studio recording, and some of the challenges that can come up and how to deal with them. Both of the presets that I'm going to demo today are free. Download link is in the description. So I wanted to talk about this because of some frustrations that came up on the last few gigs I played. You may recall a few months back I kind of found my favorite model to use with basically all of my guitars, and that is the high-powered Twin. I had used that model for some gigs a while back, and everything went great. I needed a little bit more gain, I think, and things were a little bit brighter than I had imagined, but it was a very quick fix thanks to spending a lot of time with the AX8 and some, having the FM3 for a few years now. I kind of know, like, oh, let me guess, that's wrong? Okay, let me just fix that real quick. It's pretty difficult to dial something in for like a live loud sound without it being really loud when you're dialing it in. This is because of something called the Fletcher-Munson effect, which is like when you're playing at lower volumes, the EQ will sound different than when you turn it up. If you like what you see here or get something for today's video, please comment, like, subscribe. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. When I was living in California, I had a bit more space, so I was actually able to plug into my FRFR, turn it way up, and go, okay, this is basically what it's going to sound like in the room. Now that I live in an apartment in Amsterdam, I don't really want to turn up to gig volume and piss off all my neighbors. Generally, it's the same things that come up that are issues, and there are a few things that generally take care of those issues. So a couple weeks ago, I showed up to a gig with what I thought was a pretty balanced sound. Right? It can be a bit bright, but it's not like ear piercing, and it's not like super bass heavy. When I get there, unfortunately, I plug in, get my monitors in, and it basically sounds as if I had dialed all the bass and mids down and just spiked the treble on everything with like the bright switch on and the presence at 10. It was brutal. So I thought it was one of those times where I was like, okay, well, this person is saying that they swear they don't have an EQ on my signal, so I'll just turn off the EQ block. That sort of helped. Dropping the EQ block, unfortunately, didn't solve everything, so I was still going, okay, what else can I get rid of here? Unfortunately, short of going in and like changing the presence, changing the EQ, like the amp EQ, changing the compression, everything on all the presets, I was like, what can I do right now? Like, I got as much bass as I'm gonna get back in here, and as much full sound back in here. What can I do? I did end up asking a few more questions, but basically sound person was just like, yeah, whatever. So when looking for like last ditch, what do I do? It came down to knowing your instrument, or knowing my instrument in this scenario. This instrument, the Silver Sky, the Blue Sur, those still sound wonderful when I turn the tone up down. So something like this. Now we're in the thing, but before that, a lot of acceptable sounds, and especially, as you can imagine, if someone accidentally has like a universal low cut or something like that on everything and forgot, or whatever the case is, that can be, a last chance to save kind of yourself from piercing highs in your ears. After that gig, however, I went home and dialed a very, very warm preset in. Basically one that would be bordering on too warm, but if it was turned loud, would certainly brighten up. That preset sounds like this. So to A-B the two. I used this preset the very next day, and the sound person gave me a big monitor directly at my face, turned me way up, and it was actually fine. It was maybe a little bright. I might have just gone the treble or the tone knob down just a bit, but to cut some of the highs, and everything worked perfect. It was basically like kind of anticipating a less than perfect scenario, although that sound person was actually quite good. Everything sounded, it was just a bit bright because of that Fletcher Munson thing. Although, anything blasting in your face is going to sound pretty intense. When I got home, though, this preset sounded a bit extra jazz, on the neck especially. Still nice, but maybe not like a more aggressive blues tone. Still a very nice sound though, and two of the things I did to make this preset much warmer, and I know I can rely on for anything loud and live, is I took away any EQ and I changed the compressor from a JFET to the pedal compressor 2, which is a very soft compression, at least in comparison. Will this lead to some odd bass issues? Possibly. Yeah, and if I'm playing a gig where I'm supplying my own FRFR and there's no sound person, well then I might add the EQ back just for my own sake. But while I'm going, direct and someone has an EQ available, at this point, I think I'm just going to assume they're going to treat it like a guitar amp and, cut some of the lows. So I'm just not even going to bother with an EQ right now. The whole point of the Fractal is to make your life easier live, right? It's supposed to be easier than using an amp. And to be fair, travel-wise, yes, it'll always beat an amp for sure. But, I want to be hitting at a higher batting percentage or whatever as far as getting a really great tone, and preferably the tone that I spent a lot of time dialing in. So as soon as that percentage drops because of one thing or another, it starts to get pretty annoying, and I want to find ways to deal with it. So if that means having the exact same preset dialed in for a home studio setting and a live setting, so be it. The home use one might have a more, intense compression, might have an EQ on it, and the one for live will be as bare bones as possible, because I think the sound person will probably go like, yeah, let me take care of the low, let me EQ it like I do everything else. One of the things I basically just completely understand at this point is, especially with the Fender amps, just don't choose the bright model. There's like always the, for instance, the Tweed normal and Tweed bright. That bright one, I have to make very dark in EQ and presence and everything like that to, make it not an ice pick live. At home, sounds great. Live, some sort of an ice pick. Maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if I was just on the neck pickup all night, but if I'm going back and forth with lots of different things, I have to really think about what I'm doing with a bright amp, which is pretty similar to live, honestly. Like if you ever played into a Fender Twin live and turn the bright switch on, it's like pretty intense pretty quickly. But when you're playing at quiet volumes, you turn that, bright model on and you're just like, wow, it sounds really clear, sounds really nice. This is the kind of thing that also does happen when you dial in a nice sound with an amp in a small room, or in a place where you can't turn up that loud. You'll generally cut a lot more bass than you need to, add a lot more treble than you need to, and then you turn that volume way higher at the gig and you're like, whoa. So it's not a problem unique to Fractal or unique to modelers. It's an all the time thing, and you just have to plan accordingly, because unlike with an amp, it's not always as simple if you have a pretty complicated preset to just go and go boop, 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 and good. Unless, of course, your preset is using just like an amp and then you have pedals doing everything. But for me, at least, I like having like a model that's like set for cleans, a model that's set for crunch, same amp, but different settings. So there you have it. So it's the EQ block. Make sure to have it bypassed or ready to be bypassed. That can make a big difference. How intense is your compression? If someone, is going to compress it, if the sound person is going to compress it anyway, how intense do you want your compression? And knowing your instrument and, not being afraid of that tone knob. If you have a really nice tone pot, I think you'll be in good hands. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week.